Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in, fellas, to the Monday Night Football Week 11, close the week up, wrap it up with a nice bow and ribbon, and it's a good one. It is a good one for all of you people out there. 50 implied total, should be some nice overall scoring, opportunities against both of these defenses that are banged up, borderline not good on both sides. He said the Bucs defense isn't good. Banged up, Vita Vea gonna be out. Jason Pierre-Paul playing hurt. Who knows? And then the whole secondary hurt. Yes. This isn't the same Bucs defense that we saw last year. But before we get into all that, it is Thanksgiving week. Let's start off with a good one. This is going to be a fun week. We're going to have Thanksgiving first look, Thanksgiving final thoughts in terms of content, Thursday night Thanksgiving slates, $1 million Rooskies up for grabs. We're going to have all the tools on Patreon for it. It's lovely. Week 12 will start with Thanksgiving, and we will start to attack the 10-game Sunday slate right around Friday, Saturday. That weekend, we get a quick turnaround after we get all the turkey in. It's the Black Friday shopping. We're feeling like, oh my God, $1 million. But for right now, we have this video in the live stream later today for Monday night. And with that, let's transition now into the players by salary breakdown. And this is a lot of expensive players. I mean, a lot of expensive players. If you're looking at just players alone above the $9,000 price range, you're looking at 5. 3 guys at $10,000 or above, all from the same team. 4 to 5 of these expensive guys are from the same team. And then things start to get murky with some injury news tonight between the Bucs and the Giants. Saquon Barkley is expected to return, but track that. His backup, Devontae Booker, is questionable. And Rob Gronkowski, no Antonio Brown. Rob Gronkowski, who practiced Thursday and Friday, did not practice Saturday, so now he's also a game-time decision. And Scotty Miller, another piece of news, lots of news today. Scotty Miller, who should operate as the wide receiver 3, he's Antonio Brown's backup on paper on the depth chart. And Scotty Miller is expected to return off IR, although that is not official, but maybe by the time you're watching that will become official because that move has to be done before this afternoon. So let us start up top right now with Mr. Thomas Brady himself. I mean, he's coming off of an absolute terrible game. A game where he averaged like 6.5 yards per attempt. A game where he was clearly missing Antonio Brown and Gronk. He clearly did not have a 100% Chris Godwin, who was not winning on the outside like he had the 2 previous weeks, even though this matchup was honestly and probably significantly better. And now he's seen Mike Evans, and we have quietly seen Mike Evans. I don't think a lot of people are noticing this, but really starting to slow down. He's had less than 5 targets in 3 out of his last 4 games. He is not separating downfield, and yes, he's had a matchup in there against Marshawn Lattimore. He's not separating downfield as much. He still has those spike weeks in him, but he has been becoming more of a touchdown or bust player. And this is with Antonio Brown out, right? This is with Antonio Brown not in there. Mike Evans is struggling to see targets. Now, this could be a get-right spot against the Giants' defense and secondary that, I mean, is by no means elite or by no means good. But for Tom Brady himself, you're still seeing him throw a ton per game. In that last game, it very much was slowed down because, yeah, Washington took 10 minutes, the final 10.5 minutes off the clock, and Brady still, basically in only 3 quarters of play, threw 34 times. And that's in a game where he's trailing. In this one, they are coming in with over 30 implied points. They are more than 10-point favorites in this one. So Brady at $11,200 projects out for me as the highest scoring player on the slate. I have him for 24.2 fantasy points. You can see all of my projections for ownership and overall points down below on Patreon if you're interested, the optimizer and all that stuff. I have him right now projecting out for about 5.5 points more than anybody else on the slate. The man's throwing 42 times per game for 319 yards per game. I have him projecting out for over 300 passing yards, getting that bonus today. So yes, Mr. Tom Brady is going to be also a yes for me to start this slate off up top with a big old yes. And then we get down to Mike Evans, who is not going to be yes. He's going to be a maybe. And now we'll see what the ownership comes in here. Early on, it looks like Mike Evans is going to be picking up less ownership than these guys coming in after him. I mean, for example, I have Mike Evans projecting out early on for 44% ownership, whereas his quarterback, who is $1,000 more, and Tom Brady is projecting out for 74% ownership, 30% more ownership. So there is a chance that by the time we're on the live stream that Mike Evans becomes a yes for me because of just leverage, right? Leverage in general. Like we were saying yesterday, that guys like Jonathan Taylor, Zeke, and Joe Mixon are leverage opportunities. And Joe Mixon and Jonathan Taylor go absolutely berserk, especially Jonathan Taylor. Zeke does not, I believe, does not do anything if I looked at it lately, but that's what leverage plays are going to get you. They're going to be hit or miss, just like any other plays on the other slate, but at least those leverage ones are going to be low owned. So when you play a 3% on Jonathan Taylor or a 3% on Joe Mixon, it pays off for you. That can happen today, not to that extent of being 3% owned, but lower owned compared to the field or compared to the other players with Mike Evans. Mike Evans, like we were saying, has only topped 4 targets once since week 6, right? That's not great. And that AB has been out during basically that entire time. He's been kind of touchdown or bust these last couple of weeks. You get to his teammate Leonard Fournette, who just continues to dominate. It doesn't matter what the game script is. Last week, they're trailing the whole time, so you might be thinking, oh, this is the game Giovanni Bernard plays 50% of the snaps, and Fournette is phased out in the passing game. Nope, wrong, right? Giovanni Bernard doesn't even hit 30% of the snaps, plays 29% of the snaps in that game against Washington. Fournette is still seeing the workload. He's still seeing 20 opportunities in that game. He has 9 targets and 8 catches. He himself takes on the 3-down elite role right now. now, and he's had 17 or more fantasy points in 5 out of 6 games since becoming the running back 1 on this team, since taking over the commanding opportunities and snaps in this backfield. And that makes sense when you're on one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. If you were the clear 3-down back, you're probably going to benefit from touchdowns and just overall usage and volume. That is what Leonard Fournette is doing. Leonard Fournette right now for me projects out as the 3rd highest projected player on the slate, and he is going to be a yes early on for me. We now get to the first Giants player on the slate, and this is a very fair price point. I mean, Daniel Jones is less than $10,000 for a guy who's averaging 29 rushing yards per game, and sure, that's skewed a little bit from early season work, but even in recent games, 17 yards, 20 plus yards, so he's getting good rushing yards. This is a guy who is going to, in this game, as an 11-point underdog, in a good matchup, by the way, with not only the secondary still banged up, but the defensive line absolutely banged up, especially the interior defensive line for this Tampa Bay Bucs defense. So now you have Daniel Jones coming in here, a guy who's averaging 33 attempts per game, a guy who's going to see a much better offensive line versus defensive line matchup than you were previously expecting. Still, this offensive line is absolutely atrocious for Daniel Jones, so it's not going to be anywhere near elite, but you're getting some wide receivers back. You're getting Tony and Kenny Golladay now a couple of games removed from their injuries. You might be getting a security blanket of all security blankets and Saquon, who's trending to play back. So Daniel Jones at $9,600, he comes in here, and if you're looking at it, I think that Tom Brady is a better play even despite the price difference, just value-wise. But after that, every single player above $7,000, Daniel Jones grades out as my 2nd best value right now for close to 19 fantasy points. It's just the price point here, right? Daniel Jones, if he was $10,600, 2nd highest, most expensive player on the slate, he's probably a complete fade. But with $1,000 savings on quarterbacks who normally have solid floors and pretty decent ceilings, I mean, Daniel Jones has had 17 fantasy points, I believe, in 2 out of his last 3 games. If he gets that today, it's fair for this price point. And now here's the big question mark and the big I'm scratching my head still. $9,400 Chris Godwin without Antonio Brown is only $9,400. Well, no shit, Sal. You just said he's $9,400 Chris Godwin. Yes, you get the point. But Christopher Godwin today, here's the thing. Coming into that last game against Washington, first of all, every single player basically only got to play 3 quarters. So when you're looking at Chris Godwin's numbers, yeah, he played 95% of the snaps, but the Washington football team basically milked the entire 4th quarter. You had the quick strike touchdown to Mike Evans at the beginning of the 4th quarter, right? And then Washington had the final 11 minutes or so to just milk the clock, which was unreal by them. But now you have Chris Godwin coming in, and let me read you the stats that Chris Godwin has had, even including that game where he doesn't get to play the 4th quarter, and he's clearly playing hurt in that game as he was a game-time decision and actually went. In 3 games without Antonio Brown, these last 3 games, you're getting 23 catches, 308 yards, so over 300 yards per game, right? 2 touchdowns, 31 targets, and 5 red zone looks. So you're getting over 10 targets per game, over 100 receiving yards per game. He is now number 2 in the NFL in routes run, Mr. Chris Godwin. So yes, Chris Godwin, for me, I believe he is going to be the clear and obvious captain for a lot of people because you can actually afford him on this slate at $9,400, and there are some decent mid-range plays that have some serious upside. So Godwin, I'd expect Godwin to be the 2nd highest owned player on the slate behind Tom Brady today. I'd expect Godwin to be one of the highest owned, if not the highest owned, captain on the slate, but that price point does make it justifiably so. And now before we keep going, I'll let you know about the props. I've taken the overs on both quarterbacks today. I have Tom Brady for about 303 passing yards, which is 15 or 16 yards over this number. I have Daniel Jones for the 250s, 257 passing yards, so that's about 26 yards over this. So I take both the overs. Prize Picks is usually going to lean more towards overs anyways. Player props, you generally speaking want to take unders because of injuries, because people usually overproject how they can project. But Prize Picks is usually about 15 yards, 20 yards under a lot of these numbers that I'm going out there for. Normally it's like 5 or 10 on most sites, so when it's that alarming, yeah, the overs, when they do look good, they look even better over on Prize Picks. The opposite is true on Underdog, where the unders usually look true. So you can combine these two together. This is a flex play if you want to do a power play. It's just over-unders on fantasy points, on props, on overs, receptions, all that. I'll have more probably later in the day. They have a limited board up right now as I'm recording this at like 5 in the morning. Try and get ahead of the Thursday or the Thanksgiving football slate since we got to get a lot more content out this week. But there you go. You can take the over on both of those. You combine them together. And the big thing is if you use the code SAL, and a lot of you, over 1,000 of 1,500, however many of you have already done this, and you're sitting there pretty with the free $100 Rooskies, the free bankroll that you get. Why not start with the free bankroll? If you, the beautiful person right there, to start your Thanksgiving week off right, you're going to have a lovely Thursday. You're going to bet on some games. Why not build your bankroll right now? Use the code SAL. You get a free $100 on Prize Picks. You can use that prop. You can use any other props. You can save it for Thursday and have that free $100. You can be hanging out with your uncle, your cousins, your friends, and just be like, hey, I got a free $100 riding in this game. How about that? They'll say, how the fuck do you do that? You say, hey, it's because I know football and football knows me. I got some Prize Picks. Use that code SAL, S-A-L. You get that free $1 Rooskies up to $100. So now we hit this mid-range. In the mid-range, unlike the expensive players, the average players, which I don't think these guys are average by any means, but the average price players are going to be here now when you start to get to the Giants players. And Saquon Barkley is expected to return. He was practicing during the bye week for the Giants. He practiced on Saturday. He's officially questionable, but trending to play in this game. And it's perfect timing to face the Bucs defense, who's been getting gashed lately by rookie Khalil Herbert, who got gashed in their previous game. Not gashed, but J.D. McKissic was getting there. Antonio Gibson was picking up yardage at least, which is something that you don't usually see. And now Vita Vea is out. Vita Vea is now doubtful, or whatever it is. He's going to miss this game. Jason Pierre-Paul is dealing with injury. This defensive line, the secondary, is not the same defense. It is extremely banged up. So it's the perfect time for Saquon to come back. If you're ever going to face the Bucs, it would be probably right now. And very quietly, we forget, but Saquon was seeing those 20 opportunities a game before injury, 21 and 30 plus fantasy points in those games before injury. If he plays at $7,800 in this matchup, he's going to be an underdog. You hope for more checkdowns. Saquon Barkley grades out as a very solid play. Now, maybe a yes is extreme on Saquon because he could be limited, but right now I'm going to be going with a yes on Saquon at $7,800 if he plays, and yes, he is definitely captain viable. Next up, you get Mr. Kenny Golladay, who I don't know if Kenny Galladay's hurt. He clearly doesn't seem like his heart is there. It seems like he's just given up on even caring to try and get out of his situation because it's just that bad, and he's just going to ride out this storm right now and see what happens after the season. Obviously signing that 3-year deal, but now he gets actually a beneficial matchup if you're trying to put up some points and pad your stats. Now in week 9, his return, he only played 57% of the snaps. Expect that number to go back up to 70 to 80%, especially today with no Sterling Shepard. 2 catches on 2 targets for 28 yards for Golladay has not been great. Expect in this game though about 5 to 7 targets. The $7,000 mid-range price tag, he's really going to be touchdown or bust, to be honest with you. Like the 4-catch 60-yard day is there for Kenny Golladay. It's definitely there, but this is not a guy who's going to continuously dominate in the middle of the field. That would be more so a Kadarius Toney or really a Sterling Shepard, who they don't have, right? He is not out there today. Kenny Golladay has been clearly and obviously just this outside guy. He's going to come back, do some comeback routes. He'll be down at the seam a couple times for a jump ball and maybe using the red zone. So Kenny Golladay is strongly in play. We'll see where his ownership comes in. I have his ownership coming in similar to Saquon and this next man, Kadarius Toney. So he's not going to be a yes because I prefer Saquon, and I do indeed prefer Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney has been used in his limited, in week 8 and week 9, this limited like slot role. But now there's no Sterling Shepard, but he's only played 62 and 59% of the snaps in his last 2 games. They're not putting him on the outside. They've made it pretty clear that we're keeping Slayton and we're keeping Golladay on the outside in this offense. And when Golladay comes off the field because he's limited or he's coming back from injury, well, that's when John Ross slides in. But now you have no Shepard. You have Dante Pettis still on IR, so this could be a situation where Toney, maybe they start to give him some more snaps since he dominated on the outside the one time they put him there for 80+% of the snaps in the game where everybody was hurt and he goes off for almost 200 yards as a rookie, right? So in his last 2 games, his upside's been kind of capped a little bit in the slot. But the other nice thing is that you know that you're going to get Daniel Jones targeting the slot nonstop. Ask Golden Tate in the past and ask Sterling Shepard. So even though there's been lackluster production, 5 catches on 6 targets these last 2 games, there's obviously some really good upside here now that Shepard's not going to be playing and now that he's going to command this slot role, and maybe they finally put him on the outside a little bit more for big play upside, especially in a solid matchup. Now you start to get to the range of these tight ends that are both murky. I mean, you have Evan Ingram at $6,600. The guy has only topped 5 targets once since like week 2, and so many times during week 2, there's been weeks where there's been no receivers, no Toney, no Shepard, no Golladay, no Pettis, right? And you still have him struggling to get open, right? He expect around 25 routes in this game and around 4 targets. He has had 10+ fantasy points in 3 straight games, but the last 2 games have been because he's getting a last-second touchdown or a touchdown here or there. A $6,600 Evan Ingram, projecting out for like 8 fantasy points, is not a good play. If you're playing just one lineup today, I'd probably put Evan Ingram as a no. If you're playing 150s, well then yeah, you can put him on here and he can be in play because that touchdown upside can come through as it has the last 2 weeks. But one lineup, I would say no. Rob Gronkowski is interesting. He practiced on Thursday and Friday this week, and then he did not practice on Saturday. He just DNP'd. So I don't know if there was no actual new reports. He's expected to be a game time decision. I don't know if there was actually a setback or if they were just giving him a day of rest before actually going into the game. I don't really know what was happening here. Did he practice on Thursday and Friday, and Saturday morning the back flared up and was sore, and that would not bode well for his Monday night status? So we'll have to see what ends up happening here. That's all we can say at this point. Like, we liked what he did to start the year, but we haven't seen him since then. We saw him for like a couple of snaps, and he retweaked his back because he's an older man, and he's had these back transfusions and surgeries a lot in the past. So right now, he's seen 8, 5, and 7 targets and 5 total red zone targets for 4 touchdowns through the first 3 games of the year. But until we just get that game time decision news on the live stream today, we really can't say much. If Gronk isn't at $6,200, I would probably put him still as a maybe, but I would like him definitely more than Evan Ingram. And now this next range is nowhere near good. Like, I don't want to play a $5,200 Bucks defense. They grade out for 7.7 fantasy points. That's pretty good. But again, if you're playing one lineup, I don't want to go there. But it starts to become difficult. You see Tyler Johnson, and a lot of people's eyes might widen in it and go, Tyler Johnson, great play. He's played 65+% of the snaps in 3 straight games. He's seen 2, 6, and 5 targets. You should expect somewhere around that usage today at 25 routes, no AB. Yeah, but calm down. If Scotty Miller is indeed activated as he's trending to get activated, I'd expect Scotty Miller to jump in, if not right away, and take over the wide receiver 3 role. I mean, Scotty Miller is the backup to a Mike Evans or an Antonio Brown. Tyler Johnson is the backup to Chris Godwin, more of a slot receiver. So a $5,000 Tyler Johnson now, if Scotty Miller is not playing, then Tyler Johnson is in play. But if indeed Scotty Miller is going to be in there and playing, I'd expect Scotty Miller in this game to run 12 to 14 routes, which pulls Tyler Johnson down to running about 12 to 15 routes, which means $5,000 is massively overpriced because at that point he's going to see 1 or 2 targets. So that's the case if Scotty Miller is indeed back by this afternoon. Devontae Booker, if you see Saquon back, $4,800 Devontae Booker sees a couple touches. He himself is questionable, so if he was to miss, Elijah Penny and the rookie, maybe at some point they'll get Gary Brightwell involved. Otherwise, Elijah Penny, who's basically like a 250-pound fullback, will probably see some touches as the backup. If Saquon is out and Booker plays, so there's a lot of scenarios here. If Saquon is out and Booker plays, well, then obviously a $4,800 Booker in that same matchup where this defense is banged up like I told you for Tampa Bay, well, then Booker starts to look good. But as of right now, with Saquon trending to play, Booker still actually questionable. It makes it difficult to see how Booker is going to be strongly in play because if Saquon is back, even if Saquon is limited, you'd probably expect Booker to only see like 6 touches, and at $4,800, that's just going to be a no for me. So you can see how quickly this falls off and how it becomes a little bit difficult because you get these expensive players up here who all look great, right? I mean, even Kadarius Toney, even Galladay, the 6K range and above, 7K range really and above looks great, and then you get the murky status on Gronk, the overpriced Evan Ingram, the overpriced Bucks defense, the overpriced Tyler Johnson, the overpriced Devontae Booker. Like, you're like, okay, where do we start to get some value? The kickers then come into play, and to be honest with you, the kickers are some of the best value plays on the slate. I would say that both kickers are strongly in play. I have Suckup projecting out for more, so I can put him on here as a yes, but the big thing here is that these guys are like, I have Suckup for 8.8 fantasy points on DraftKings, and I have 7.2 fantasy points for the kicker in Graham Gano. So I do think that both are strongly in play. If I had to choose one, I'd choose Suckup early on, but if you want to leave more money on the table, you'll probably get more different and more of a unique lineup by playing Gano at this point. Obviously, the 10 to 11 point team total is the big difference why Suckup has a better projection. Now, this 3K range is where we can maybe find some value. Like Cameron Brate will operate as the tight end 1 if there is no Rob Gronkowski. Brate has ran 25 routes per week over the last 4 weeks without Gronk. He's had 15 targets during that time. He's kind of been touchdown or bust though, like you saw last week. So if Rob Gronkowski is in there, we'll expect probably 1 to 2 targets for Brate, and he's definitely not in play. If Gronk is out, expect Brate to see somewhere around 3 targets. He's not a strong yes, but he's a maybe. I'd probably even prefer the kicker still over Cameron Brate at that point. So here we go, people. This is it. If you're looking for any value on this slate, and there is not a lot of value, there's a lot of like shit $1,000 and $2,000 value we're about to get to. If you're looking for any value that might actually have something to it here, this is the man. It has to be Darius Slayton. You don't love that. You don't love to see that at all. He's been struggling. He hasn't had a catch in his last 2 games. So when I'm saying, this is the guy that puts your chips on today, go all in the middle, and don't actually go all in here on Darius Slayton. But Darius Slayton here, look, hasn't had a catch in the last 2 games since returning from injury, right? Since returning from injury in week 7, 3 games, he's had 5 catches, 63 yards on 12 targets. That's not great. But now there's no Sterling Shepard. And here's the thing. There's nobody else down here. You're comparing a guy who's going to run 25 routes as an outside wide receiver, a starting receiver in a good matchup, to backup tight ends in Kyle Rudolph, to third string running backs in Ronald Jones, to wide receiver 5s in Jalen Darden and Colin Johnson down here. So this is the guy. Now there's another guy down here, maybe 2, but this is the one guy who's actually going to see a secure role of probably 25 to 30 routes, depending on how many times Daniel Jones throws in this game. Slayton for me projects out for 8.2 fantasy points. At 8.2 fantasy points, he's projecting out similar to Rob Gronkowski, Evan Ingram, Bucks defense. Those are $5,000 and $6,000 players, making him a clear value and a clear guy that I have interest in today. You next get the Giants defense. I don't really like them too much. They're facing Tom Brady. They're 2,800, but it's a lack of value on this slate, so I'll put them on there as a maybe. And here's the range now where we kind of close it up at $2,000 or below, and we try and find a diamond in the rough or so. It's going to be difficult. Kyle Rudolph has played 54% of the snaps this year. And actually, before we get into Kyle Rudolph, let's actually start to build out. And I'll show you where I like to lean for SuperDraft tonight if you are a SuperDraft player. Leonard Fournette in the captain looks really good because of that high multiplier. Fournette is my highest projected player on SuperDraft by 5.1, 5.2 fantasy points today. And when you put him in the captain spot, it obviously gets better. So right now, Leonard Fournette, my highest projected SuperDraft play. He would be my captain option tonight. SuperDraft contest is going to be having, $25,000 overall in the contest pool tonight. The contest will not fill. It'll be your best advantage. If you want to play anywhere, you can play in SuperDraft. Free $25 to play in this contest or any other contest over there. If you use the code SAL, wherever you use the code SAL, you get the free bonuses. You get them here, you get them over on Price Picks, you get them wherever the hell you want. After that, my next two highest projected plays are Chris Godwin, who has a lovely multiplier of 1.5x. I have no idea why he continues to be undervalued in the marketplace, and Kadarius Toney at 1.85x. Those are my three highest projected plays in the slate, and pretty significantly. After that, you can fill in the remaining two. I mean, Evans, Brady, Galladay, Daniel Jones, they all look good. The kickers look good as well, but those are my three guys to start you with. They're my three favorite captains on SuperDraft. They are three solid plays, really on both sides, DraftKings, but also SuperDraft is really stand out. If you're not familiar with SuperDraft.io, it's a multiplier format. It is not salary cap based, so you can just play anybody you want. It really just depends on their multiplier. It's really going to depend then on their projection. We have those on Patreon, but also if you want to just try it risk-free, $25 if you use the code SAL when you sign up and to make your first deposit. So now these remaining players, let's go speed round here since a lot of them aren't great. I mean, you get Kyle Rudolph. He's running 13 routes a game, seeing 2.6 targets per game. He hasn't topped 10 routes since week 7, so he's only had 8, 9, and 7 routes the last 3 games. He has had production during that time because he's catching 4 balls and he's found the end zone, but for the most part, $2,200 Kyle Rudolph, he is touchdown or bust. I'm going to put him on here as a no. Again, touchdown or bust means if he scores a touchdown, he's in play. So if you think he scores a touchdown, play him. $1,800 Giovanni Bernard has overtaken Ronald Jones as the clear running back 2 on this team, but he has still not passed up Leonard Fournette as the passing down back. He has played 22 and 29% of the snaps. So even in a game last week where they're trailing nonstop, he's still not even playing 30% of the snaps. It's still Fournette seeing 9 targets. Giovanni Bernard this year has only carried the ball 7 times. So if he's not getting that elite passing game usage, even in games where they're trailing like last week, how does he really get there? Like last week, he only ran 11 routes. The Bucs are not going to be trailing most of the game often like they were last week. And in those games, he's only running 11 routes. He's not seeing any carries. It's still difficult to get there for me. He's a no. Again, if you like these guys, go ahead and play them. If you're playing 150s, yeah, I do think you should have shares of them. If you're playing one specific lineup, this is kind of the way that I would play it and roll with it. Ronald Jones is a no as well. He only played 2% of the snaps last week. This is a guy who has not been playing that much. He has not topped 20% of the snaps since week 2. He's only seeing 5.5 opportunities per game and 3.3 fantasy points per game. You are a no, Mr. Ronald Jones. Speed round continues to OJ Howard, who will operate as the tight end 3 and not be in play if Gronk returns tonight. If Gronk is out, he'll operate as the tight end 2, where he's running around 12 routes per game, and at that point, you can expect 1 to 2 targets and around a catch or 2 catches. I have him projecting out right now, OJ Howard, for 2.2 fantasy points. Again, this entire range, if they score a touchdown, is probably in play, but if not, they're a no. If Scotty Miller returns today, either way, I don't really know how you can play Jalen Darden. He's been primarily the small school 7th round pick for them, has been primarily a special teams player. He has only ran 21 routes and seen 7 targets all season long, having just 9 fantasy points all year long in 5 active games where he's taken a snap on offense. But now if Scotty Miller returns, he's not even going to be the wide receiver 4. He's going to be the wide receiver 5, which means that you as well, sir, are not in play. And now we get to some players who are actually in play. Let's roll on down Mr. John Ross. Now keep in mind, these guys are $400 and $200. I literally have them projecting out for about 3 fantasy points, but that's 2 to 3 more fantasy points than everybody else down here, so let's take the flyer. John Ross should operate as the wide receiver 4 tonight. So John Ross should probably play around 25% of the snaps, similar to the role that he played in week 8 against Kansas City, where he had 2 big catches for 70 yards. So you should expect 25% of the snaps and 2 to 3 targets. That's actually pretty good usage. 25% of the snaps probably leads to about 12 routes, 10 routes. That's decent usage. It's not elite. He's going to run 10 to 12 routes today. He's probably only going to see 1 to 3 targets. So just keep that in mind. This is not an elite play, but relative to the other guys down here, John Ross is in play, and so is Scotty Miller at $200. If Scotty Miller returns tonight, if there is one player below $2,000, one player below $1,000, one player even below $3,000, even including the Giants defense, that I would take a flyer on, it would be Scotty Miller. And now I said a flyer, not a stab, not a go all in on. It is a flyer on, it would be Scotty Miller if he is activated, right? If he's not activated, he has to be activated by this afternoon off IR to actually return and be eligible to play tonight. So by the time you're watching this, you might have that news. It usually happens in the mid-afternoon. So at $200, Scotty Miller, if he is indeed activated, I'd expect Scotty Miller to play and run around 10 to 12 routes. I'd expect 1 to 3 targets, and if you're getting 1 to 3 targets out of Scotty Miller, it's usually downfield targets, which leads to upside. Similar analysis that we had for John Ross. John Ross, 1 to 3 targets, 25% of of the snaps, usually downfield. The problem with Scotty Miller in a good way is that he might have more upside. Scotty Miller might slide right into that wide receiver 3 role and 3 wide receiver sets ahead of Tyler Johnson. I'm not too sure with Tyler Johnson the last 3 weeks playing and actually getting some chemistry if that will happen, but Scotty Miller had chemistry for the first 8 games last year, right? In the first 8 games before Antonio Brown got there, in 4 of those 8 games, Scotty Miller scored 10 plus fantasy points with Tom Brady. So Scotty Miller in play. The final man on here, Colin Johnson, will operate as wide receiver 5, only ran 3 routes as wide receiver 5 in week 9. He is not in play for me. So bada bing, bada bang, fellas. We're starting the Monday, the Thanksgiving week off with a fucking headbanger. A good slate, a lot of really good plays. The mid-range has some options. The low flyer range has some options. Loaded up top. It is very top heavy today. Very, very top heavy today. Who's going to be that one guy? Does Scotty Miller open everything up? Is it John Ross opening everything up? Is it Giants defensive score? We'll find out later tonight on the live stream as well. You can bring your questions. I'll try and bring them answers for you. For an hour to an hour and a half, we'll be live around 6 p.m. East Coast time. So I appreciate you beautiful people tuning into this stream right now. Thank you for tuning in. And if you have never heard of this, ratethispodcast.com/Sal. We have a podcast version of the show. You might be listening there right now. If you go to ratethispodcast.com/Sal, you can leave a review and your chance to win $100. I draw a raffle each week. The review takes literally clicking 5 stars takes 2 seconds. And if you want to say something nice about the show, it'll take only 20 seconds of your time. So I appreciate you a ton. Your chance at a raffle of $100. Another way to get even more dollariskis during your Thanksgiving week right there. ratethispodcast.com/Sal. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate you all so much. I'll see you in the next one. I'll see you when I see you on the live stream later tonight.